Okay, welcome to the last part of Module 3, where we're specifically going to be going through a contrarian setup on the price ladder. We're going to take a look at how the market interacts around these larger time frame participants. And on the first two that we went through, the first two examples of absorption, we saw very short-term scalping. We also saw something on a trend following perspective. That is somewhat short-term, but we probably saw a few large time frame participants also taking place there. This is a little bit larger time frame because as we're gonna see, is an area in which the buyers were taking initiative passively around a very big area, and it's a zone. It's not necessarily a level. It's a very large area in which buyers were very active over the last few weeks in the Bund future. So, as we just said, we're looking at contrarian absorption setup. And this is going to be a lot more longer time frame as opposed to what we saw in the previous, as opposed to what we saw in the previous videos. So let's just pull up a chart first of all for what we're going to be looking at, so we can just give you guys a little bit of context of what we're actually looking at here on a price chart. This is a 60-minute chart of the Bund futures. And specifically, we're looking at this zone in here. So this is the day we're going to be looking at in here. But if we look at the previous structure, we could see that the market had bid up into this region in here. We'd spent some time specifically in this little price base. And you can see this is a very key level in here. And then if we extend this over to the side here, this is the area we want to be taking a look at very specifically, because that area is essentially the area where we already saw previous absorption. Just by looking at this chart, you can see the market had absorbed any sellers in here. Once we took out this area, this is what launched us higher. Now the market has now come back off a long way since the high at 157.67. Now we're effectively 2 points lower, a little short of 2 points lower, and we're back into this really key zone. This is what we call our Launchpad, and we got back to our Launchpad. We want to see if there's any buyers there again. Now we're looking at this day. We've already seen as an example this day in here where the buyers already stepped in and lifted us back into the zone here. So you could see we're now ranging between here and here, which was previous key zones already. Now we're coming back on this specific day into this region, and we're looking specifically, I mean, a lot more specifically, we're looking at this, we're looking at this candle, these candles in here, or specifically that candle. If we actually look on a very short time frame, what that looks like, this is our 5-minute chart of the day, and just so I can give you guys a little bit of context of what we did on the day, the market had been somewhat range bound in here, and now we're coming into that very key zone, and we know that zone is from around the 155, 84s, 85s, between 84s and let's say 89s, this little region here, all the way down to 74s. So we're looking at around here, 88s, 89s, all the way to 74s. Now we know from previous, charting and just very, very simple charts, we can tell that this is an absorption zone. So that's something we've already been able to identify. Now, the other fact is we want to see that potentially play out on the price ladder. So, effectively, whilst you're trading this, you wouldn't have known this market actually bid up. But, the market was effectively selling off into this area. And I know there was probably a lot of traders actually looking for that area to break. because we knew that there was a very big absorption zone, and potentially below that it would be stops. But let's just see what the price action looks like there, and how we could have, ascertained that it was going to actually move back up to the upside. So just bear with me for a second here. So here we go. As you can see here, we're trading on 155.87s, offer 87s, bid 86s, and the market's now slowly making its way lower. Now, what I'm going to be doing here, trying to point out the price action, drawing on the price ladder as we speak, and as this plays out. But at the same time, I'm going to try and build a position as well, as and when I see the price action. So as we can see here, we're trading the lows, 200, trading at the lows, being hit into the bid. Someone, it seems already, is trying to absorb this area because it's not letting it take it easily. So we've just gone offered 83s again, 100 trades into 82s, bam, we're absorbing it. So now at this point in time, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to try and get in with potentially a 10 lot, very, very quick potential scalps. Now, obviously, because I'm drawing on here and trying to get involved in the market, I didn't get filled on that. So what we're going to try and do is remove that for now, because we didn't get filled there. So we're going to see if we can get back in potentially a little bit lower. Now we bid 83s, trading 84s. 94 lots are traded into 84s. The market's now gone bid by buying 350, 360 lots. We're now gone bid at 85s, bid 86 trading 87. So from a price action perspective, let's just take this into account. What we've just seen in this very, very brief time. The market's come down into a region at 81s. We've now bid back up very easily to around 86s, 87s. So we've had the market move down. The market's now had a pretty decent pullback already. So from a standpoint of aggressiveness, the selling is not aggressive enough to keep the market pinned down and not able to rally 2 or 3 ticks. If the market can't rally 2 or 3 ticks, then we say, okay, maybe the sellers are a little bit aggressive in here. But it seems as if, at least in the short term, we're seeing the buyers being able to lift the market up, a good 6 to 7 ticks from the lows. That's the first indication of price action that we're seeing here. Let's just see how this reacts here. We're back at the lows. We've just gone off at 82s. The market's now, we're seeing a little bit of reloading here. We've just taken that low out. We're trading 80s. So we've got quite a bit of size here at 80s. Someone's just taking that out. We're just taking that out. We're trading 78s. Let's see how the market reacts here at 78s. We've just traded through there. We're just going to buy some contracts there because it seemed as if we're having a lot of trouble to get through this area. Every time someone sells through it, we're seeing a buyer step right back into the market. Now, if we can get back above these 81s, at this point in time, we could try and scale 5 real quick because we just saw that absorption. If we can get back above these 81s, we might be looking to get a little bit more heavy on the long side. We've just gone back above these 81s. Let's just see how we're reacting around this level. So that potentially, because that 81s, 82s was our previous low, anything above that is a false break. So we're just going to try and absorb back where we saw that buyer step into the market. Our stops very, very, very close at around 76, 75. We've seen a big bid here at 75s. We're now long 15 contracts. Like I said, we get through 81s. We've had that price action down. We've just traded down at 77s again. And you're seeing, on the price ladder, we're actually seeing buyers try and fight this out before, with the selling, coming into the market. There hasn't been that much of a fight except for that bounce up. We're trying to get back above these 81s. If the buyers can start taking a little bit more control of this, because we've seen the absorption at 77, 78s. If that buyer now wants to come to market with a little bit more size. We've just seen a lift 250 contracts. That's a good sign that there's a good big buyer in the market. I'm gonna try and lift 82s here. So I'm lifting 82s. I've just gone bid at 82s. If this buyer can start staying a little bit more aggressive now, he's absorbing this region. Notice the volume profile here. Usually around these tail end of the day, like a low of the day, gets created on very tapered type profile. So what you'd normally see with a tapered profile is the market will trade down, and we'll see somewhat of a very thin tail to the downside. In this case, we've got very chunky and then a very little one price tail, in fact. So now we've just gone bid 84s. We've just essentially between 81s and 77s, false broke. So we're actually trying to get a little bit more on here. And so we're seeing on the book 900 lots here. It seems as if someone might be trying to game uh, the sellers to sell here while he gets filled on the bid. There you go. You see, it's just someone's just sold into those 84s and he's just reloaded quite a bit of size. So he's getting a little bit more aggressive here. We're going to try and buy a little bit more here because we're just trying to get, we're seeing a bigger time frame absorption here. And what's happening at these offers, someone's spoofing. Now, we haven't gone through spoofing yet, but it's important to note that we're seeing big size on the offer. And as the market trades in, so what we're seeing is, let me just try and draw on this. We're seeing is big size on the offers. And then every time someone hits the bid, we're getting the bids reload and add more size. So it's important. Take note of this price action because, for someone for a bigger time frame participant, he's looking to potentially try and absorb this market up. Now, notice I'm not going to add any more size here because my average price is 82s. That's basically right above that previous low at 81s. We had that false break here, back above. Now, my stop on this trade is very clearly 76s. That's my stop loss. I know if we get 6 ticks lower than where my entry is, 6 ticks risk on this trade, I'm looking for a reversion, a mean reversion back into the range. Now, a lot of the trade setups that we've seen in the last two videos with regards to absorption, we've seen trend following, short-term scalps, so we're actually in the direction of the move. But this is obviously a contrarian type move, and we're looking at an absorption over a bigger time frame. So obviously I'm not going to be able to show you this whole how this whole video actually plays out, how this actually plays out, and you've seen it on the price chart. However, the market does actually start bidding up, and essentially what we'd be looking for is if the market could start bidding back above these 88s, which you can see is now holding us as resistance for now. The high of the day, if we can just put that into a little bit of context, is all the way up here at 156.27. So we've got quite a bit of work to get up to the highs of the day, but what we would be looking for is potentially just a move. We can just see here, we've just been bid up, just trying to get bid up through these 88s, 89s. If we can start holding these bids above this region, maybe we can start seeing a little bit more of a filling out up to the middle of the range here. So this is essentially, from a price action perspective, if we could just take note of what we saw. With the move down to 81s, we got up to 86, 87s. We took out these 81s and we got down to 77. There was a huge buy. I mean, there's a big bid. If we just take note, there was a very big bid sitting at 78s. A big bid sitting at 78s. He got taken out. They kept selling more into 78s and 77s, but they kept reloading, and effectively right after that, we started seeing, after that got absorbed, we saw a move back above these 81s. And once we took out these 81s by about 2 or 3 ticks, that's where we saw the move back up to that previous resistance at 86, 87s. And now we've just kind of made our way a little bit in here. consolidated a little bit, and now we've taken out that previous key resistance level that we just saw in there. We're just taking that level out, and we're just starting to fill out a little bit higher. But from a price action perspective, notice how it's really important to understand that this did not take place at one price. You did see absorption. We didn't get filled on our initial bid. We're trying to get filled here at 82s. We didn't get filled there. We had to bounce up. Effectively, if we did get filled, we could have taken one position in here, stay light on your feet, take a small position in here, take a second position in here to average your price down. You know, potentially scalping it, trying to keep a core position on. Once we get through this area, that's where you want to get a little heavier on your position, because now essentially we've seen the false breakout. We know our risk is now below this low at 76s. So we've got that risk. We know that if we get back above this level, we're going to see some good price action to the upside. So as we just mentioned, I mean, if I just had to highlight it very quickly, what we identified first. So identify the absorption zone / area. So we already knew that it was there. We could identify it very clearly on the price, pinpoint to it. That's the area where we're seeing the absorption. Then we wait, and we wait until we see the buyers trying to put up a fight. So we're looking for obviously absorption, but we're looking for the buyers to put up a little bit of a fight in that zone. So we're looking for the buyers / the sellers to put up a fight. So we know we're trying to see them put up a fight. When I say put up a fight, this was our first initial put up a fight in here. That was them trying to fight back the sellers. We saw the false break. And then when we see potentially large size absorbed. Now, obviously, up until we got here, we didn't trade that much size. And 78s, we had about 1,000 lots. You see 990, about 1,000 contracts actually got absorbed there. So we saw a significant amount actually get taken out and absorbed at that price. So once we see a large size absorbed, and then what we want to see is from passive to aggressive. And that's when we start getting ourselves, that's where we start getting aggressive with the setup. And that's where we can start setting our risk parameters. Now, until then, throughout this process, from an execution standpoint, like we said before, the main thing you want to be doing, the very, very important factor that you want to be doing is staying light on your feet until it gets aggressive. So while you're passive, while you're passive, stay light on your feet. And then when you get aggressive, that's when you can get heavier. That's when you can get heavy. So yeah, that's basically how we could potentially view a contrarian setup. It's very interesting. Obviously, it takes a little bit more experience to start identifying a big area. It's a little easier to see just at one price. You could have said just purely at 78s. You could have just said just purely at 78s, there was a little scalp opportunity. If you're looking for a larger time frame position, you got to start identifying the fact that it's over a zone. You know that between these 85s down all the way to these 74s, we potentially have a buying zone. Does the price action on the buy side reflect absorption? Does it reflect someone passively sitting there waiting to get filled? And you saw there was size on the bids. Every time someone would sell into it, he'd reload. And then essentially, once we saw that false break, that showed you the indication this is not going lower today. The buyer stepping in here, and we could potentially get that move back into the range. So hopefully you got a great amount out of this module of absorption. In the next module, we're going to actually be covering front running orders. So that's a very interesting topic. It's something we could have covered first, but I thought this is a little bit more interesting to understand how, we could see the passive buyers and sellers interact. The next one is going to be purely just front running orders. And it's obviously a very interesting topic. So do stay tuned. Make sure you're doing your trading drills, and stay passionate about this. This is definitely something that's going to help your trading in the long run. Thank you very much.